Hello there, welcome to the news in details now. 11 FLN captives today were handed over by Burundi to Rwanda through the expanded joint verification mechanism EJVM at Nembo one-stop border post.
Arriving on the Rwandan soil, the FLN militia who plotted terrorist attacks in the south and west of the country were immediately handcuffed by the Rwandan security forces. All 11 are men and have been arrested in Burundi in connection with the country's cooperation with border security officials in the Great Lakes region. The head of the military investigations from both countries have said that the fact that the FLN militias were extradited to Rwanda shortly after Rwanda extradited to Burundi the Red Tabara fighters was a good sign of rebuilding strong ties between the two countries. Colonel Khalid Mohammed, deputy head of the Great Lakes Regional Security Task Force, said the transfer of militia from the member states was being carried out in order to restore peace and confidence in the Great Lakes region.
On August, we come from Goma, DRC, to Bujumbura, and we do our verification with all the groups. There are more than 11 at that time, but after our verifications, with the support of Burundi authority, the intelligence office. After that, we reached that those 11, some of them they are confessed that they are Rwandans, and other we know that they are Rwandans by the document and by that document is supported by Burundi. Actually, for me as the deputy commander, this is not the first time for us in the ICGLR member state to witness like such events. We hand over ex-combatant between DRC, Rwanda, DRC, Uganda, and between DRC and South Sudan. Lastly, 1 month ago also there is some elements they are hand over from Rwanda to Burundi. My request for the states or the members, the country members of ICGLR, to go and proceed to achieve our mandate as ICGLR, as expanding joint verification mechanism, to restore the mutual trust between the country states. I think this event is a witness and is evidence of that we are going in the right way, to collect all the country, to restore the mutual trust between the country and the member state of ICGLR.
The search for militia in Rwanda and Burundi was approved by a joint meeting of military intelligence agencies in the two countries in August the 28th of last year. Lucien Simba, the deputy head of office and chief coordination, United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, said this was a sign of restoration of peace and in both countries.
Au nom du représentant spécial du secrétaire général des Nations Unies pour la région des Grands Lacs,
I am here to represent the Special Envoy of the Secretary General of the United Nations in the Great Lakes region. Before I came, I asked him what to say, and he said two things. First, I would like to say thank you to Rwanda and Burundi for your continued efforts to restore peace, urging that this step of restoring peace in the Great Lakes region not be delayed, but that you have our full support.
Il m'a demandé de vous dire qu'il vous encourage.
In addition to these, the FLN fighters from Burundi who have been extradited to Rwanda, the Rwandan courts have been hearing cases of the former FLN militia, including their former leaders who have been arrested across the world.
Now, the Ministry of Trade and Industry says the billion Rwandan loss was due to lack of solid research, and this led to 2 out of 6 factories to kick off the new program dubbed Uruganda Iwacu.
Uruganda Iwachu Community Processing Centers, CPCs, started in 2013, and about 4 billion Rwandan francs was invested in this. The money was invested in 6 industries that were meant to increase agricultural and livestock production in Nyabihu, Burera, Rutsiro, Rwamagana, Nyanza, and Gatsibo districts. However, to date, all these industries are operating at a loss. An example is Rutsiro Honey, which was supposed to process 8 products, but so far it processes the same product, which operates at a ratio of between 6% and 13% of the capacity of the factory, while Nyabihu Potatoes also accounts for 1% by its capacity because it makes 1 out of the 4 of the products it was meant to produce. Speaking about this issue, the Minister of Trade and Industry, Honorable Beata Habyarimana, explained to the plenary sitting to the chambers of deputies, parliamentarians, that this was due to the fact that there was no solid research, giving Nyabihu as an example. We had problems with the Nyabihu factory. We had incomplete production chain. The investor brought the machines on the 24th of April 2015, but the factory was incomplete. When they were done, there was an issue of testing, and we realized that the machines were not enough for the factory because we did not have the solid research that we were meant to do. This sparked a lengthy debate with the lawmakers asking the minister if the people behind the laws have been brought to book.
Why did we have a factory start working without proper research? Because this is what caused all the losses. Why did we not have this research? Who followed this up? Would you start a factory without proper research and planning?
The Minister for Trade and Industry, Beata Habyarimana, then admitted to the mistakes made by the government agencies, including PDF, NIRDA and others, adding that the perpetrators have been brought to justice and that 14 million Rwandan francs have so far been recovered. Other cited examples were problems at the Gatsibo district leather processing plant, which has halted due to the lack of operating capital of 63 million Rwandan francs, which was to be provided by the shareholders, including NIRDA and PDF. In an effort to reduce the losses incurred by the industries, including the milk factory from Burera district and Nyanza Ceramics, the two were handed over to the private sector, but also continues to increase the government losses. The Burera dairy factory was sold for 270 million, with the initial price standing at 790 million Rwandan francs, while the Nyanza Ceramics was built at 430 million but was sold for only 88 million Rwandan francs. The issue of the Burera dairy factory is among the issues raised by President Paul Kagame during his visit to Musanze, Burera and Nyabihu districts in May 2019, where the head of state called for the privatization of these industries while looking at the benefits of the citizens and their producers.
You as people who are in charge, how are you solving the problems to do with working capitals? As you are behind the building and the start of these factories, I have not refused privatization, but it means it's in the hands of an investor, and we have to look at how they will perform. They could succeed or fail depending. They could close, but that's on them for various reasons. But the biggest loss is that it affects the citizens the most, who have nowhere to take their milk. Why then did we put up these factories? We put them up because we wanted the citizens to benefit the most.
Besides the privatization of these factories, Burera and Nyanza, the government is left with four others, one in Rwamagana that invested worth 1.98 billion Rwandan francs, Nyabihu about 1 billion Rwandan francs, 480 million for Rutsiro, and 195 million Rwandan francs for Gatsibo.
National Women's and Youth Council elections were held on Tuesday in more than 14,000 villages in Rwanda. Those elected pledged to contribute to the development of these sectors and to address the challenges that they do face. In various parts of Kigali, local elections for women and youth council elections were done at the village level. Members of the electorate pointed out some of the things which they expect those elected to fulfill or put much effort in. Some of the issues faced by women are poverty and abuse, and we want these issues to be addressed. Those that have been elected say they have made efforts in terms of establishing activities that benefit the community. We shall put more efforts in women community meetings so that we educate and share with each other topics like ways of taking care of our families and compliance with government programs. The constituency of the National Women's Council was made up of all women aged 18 and above in each village, and the youth were aged between 16 and 30. The electoral officer in Nyarugenge and Gasabo district, Jean Bosco Rutikanga, says the elections were well conducted. The elections went smoothly. A lot of people showed up and adhering to the COVID-19 preventive guidelines. The elections began at 7 a.m., hence they were done early, and voters resumed to their activities. These elections were carried out in districts across the country. In each village, 7 women were elected to the National Women's Councils and 7 in the Youth Council Committee. On October 23rd, they will meet with 3 elected members from each village group, Isibo, electing the Village Executive Committee and the village representative in the Cell Council. Now, on 18th October 2021, Rwanda security forces pursued smugglers who crossed the Rwanda-DRC border at Hehusel-Wugeshi sector of the district. Rwandan law enforcement forces unintentionally crossed a few meters into the DRC while pursuing the smugglers who were carrying unidentified packages and believed to have been armed. The RDF and FARDC maintain good relations and continue to collaborate on security matters. Moving on, some of the experts in Africa's microfinance sector who attended the conference in Africa on microfinance institutions, known as LA Semen African de Microfinance, find that the governments of the countries should put more effort into distributing resources and do more to promote activities that will reduce the poverty rate and their citizens, as well as encouraging small and medium-sized enterprises to accelerate economic recovery programs.
It was a conference that was attended by more than 600 people, known as La Semaine Africaine de Microfinance, which is one of the largest conferences that has been held in Kigali that saw a large number of people in attendance who followed guidelines for the prevention measures of COVID-19 as well. Aissa Toure from the African Development Bank say that while many countries are still trying to recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, they still have a responsibility to make it easier for small financial institutions to support the economic recovery.
For private sector and microfinance institutions to play a bigger role, I think our countries have to kind of clean have a better enabling environment in terms of policy strategy and incentive for those actors to play. Because I think that unless that enabling environment is there and assure those players that they can, provide the right product to the right target groups, I think that it will take time to be there.
The conference was held for the 5th time in a row, where post-COVID-19 economic recovery was part of the agenda, but mainly focusing on protecting the environment, especially preventing air pollution. Nevertheless, experts say if post-COVID-19 effects are not given attention, especially on the workforce and social well-being, it could reduce the likelihood of sustainable peace and security.
We have data that shows youth unemployment has been correlated with increased terrorism across the globe. And climate change diminishing economic growth means it contributes to youth unemployment. But let's also not forget that conflict is not just holding the fighting with guns. There is also conflict in the minds of people who go to bed hungry. They don't have food. That's conflict. It's conflict of food insecurity. It's conflict of alternatives. And therefore, at the end of the day, a clear strategy that needs to be fostered should be the integration of climate action from an investment opportunity so that everybody can have the socio-economic strong base to put food on the table and money in more pockets.
In his opening remarks at the conference, the Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Dr. Uziel Ndangijimana, said that small and medium-sized enterprises play a key role in providing financial services to the community, but that there are still barriers based on lack of sufficient knowledge.
Microfinance sector in Africa continues to play a critical role in achieving financial inclusion and in contributing to economic development and to poverty reduction. However, a large number of people in Africa are still without access to loan and deposit services. Financial literacy and education in general remain low, and this impacts negatively the citizens' capacity to use financial services. While this is a challenge for access to finance in Africa, MFIs can turn this challenge into an opportunity by adapting their services to the needs and capacity of this specific clientele, which is actually the majority in our countries.
According to the Association of Microfinance Institutions in Rwanda, the government provided more than 5 billion Rwandan francs to the financial sector to help these financial institutions to meet their obligations, including facilitating the repayment of loans and to these institutions. Martina Evera, RTV News.
Thank you, Martina, for that report. Now, ahead of the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference, also known as the COP26, young environmental activists in Rwanda are calling for strong measures to mitigate climate change and ensure sustainable recovery during the post-COVID-19 era. According to these activists, the future of Mother Earth is in danger if leaders do not take action now to invest in green growth and climate-resilient future.
The expectation at COP26 is to see more action, because I think now is more than enough that we have been going a long way with a lot of policy, a lot of discussion, but not having action, especially when we're talking about climate finance, accessibility of adaptation funds in the community, all loss and damage with a kind of a climate injustice for our generation. So we hope at COP26 we're going to see more engagement and more action transferable in our grassroots community, so that we can all have a future, because otherwise we are not having a future.
Young people, as we know, are actually the one that we own this future, and because we are really worried about the future, and we need both governments and others to take really action. Designing policies that are actually protect capacity building for businesses and SMEs, redesigning green financial instruments, so young people can actually tap into youth-designed green financial instruments. Here, talking about grants, loans, venture capital, so that maybe they can actually revive their businesses, hire more young people, as well as scale their businesses. Another thing I would also touch on is environmental conscious society. So we know education can actually contribute to tackling climate change, but yet most of our education programs, national curriculums, they don't really cover climate change well. So we want that they touch base on education policies.
For me, what I expect from it is to change what interactions that change the community.
Despite being among the least contributors of greenhouse gas emissions, Rwanda is already experiencing the effects of climate change. It's against this background that Rwanda has invested billions of dollars in developing a green economy over the years, as explained by the CEO of Rwanda Green Fund, Teddy Mugabo.
A study on the economics of climate change was conducted, and it actually indicated that climate change impacts could actually cost 1% of our GDP on an annual basis. And this was also further costed that we could lose up to, basically, this is costed to $330 million USD annually. So this is something that is quite significant, and that's why it's, first of all, it's important to mainstream as we develop how do we make sure that we're taking climate change into consideration, but how do we also ensure that we are attracting the financing. So far, since the establishment of the fund in 2012, we've been able to mobilize over $200 million. And with this funding, we've supported over 45 projects, and this is really across board. We intervene in projects that are in the conservation of natural resources. We've supported projects around electric mobility. So really the focus is on building resilience of the local communities, but also there's also an aspect of technology and innovation. How do we ensure that we come up with technology and innovation to basically ensure that we are adopting green technologies? Yeah.
COP26 is scheduled to be held in the city of Glasgow, Scotland, between 31st of October and 12th November 2021 under the presidency of the United Kingdom. While speaking at the gathering of young environment activists and green investors who are set to attend COP26 in Glasgow, the British High Commissioner to Rwanda believes that the UN Environment meeting will set moment for concrete action and collaboration between Rwanda and the UK to mitigate climate change.
You know, the issue of climate matters most to young people because it's their futures that we're talking about. So we really have to learn from them. And one of the things I heard from the young people today was that they don't want to just be invited to things to speak and then we don't follow up. They really want to contribute to these issues and contribute to the solutions. So there's a large number of young Rwandans who are going to COP. And then after the summit, I've pledged that we will also have further discussions about how we take forward those decisions in a way that benefits young people in this country. And then I think we can also work together as we move towards the CHOGM Commonwealth Summit next year, which will also focus on climate to a degree. We need to work together to ensure that we're keeping within our temperature targets, that we're reducing emissions, and that we're sort of adapting our way of living to a more sustainable way. And I think, after COVID, we can all think about how do we grow back, but how do we grow back greener? And that's something we're working together with Rwanda on.
Experts on economic matters find that the problem of high interest rates on loans is still high and can only be solved if 86% of those who save sacrifice at least 30% of their income so that the financial sector in the country lends to lower interest rate as desired by most of the clients of financial institutions.
It has been 4 years since Claude Uwimana decided to be an entrepreneur after 5 years working for others. He said he started a very small business but is now proud of the progress he has made in the business as it has required him to keep persisting. It's a pleasure he shares with others who have also decided to start saving to a point where they see progress. It required a lot of energy and efforts on my end because I passed through a lot of things that needed me to be patient. I also had to stay away from different temptations such as peer pressure or unnecessarily spending my money. I had to invest a lot of time and energy into my work. With any amount of money, as long as you have a goal, you can achieve financial satisfaction. There is a way we sometimes use motorbikes that people loan to us and we share the profit. However, if you save enough money, you can be able to buy your own. I started out sharing a motorbike with someone, but later on I managed to save enough money to buy it. With high interest rates on loans, Eric Rwigamba, Director General of Financial Sector Development, says this is a problem due to the low level of people's ability to save in Rwanda.
For a well-being of a family and transformation of our communities will be built on a strong foundation of a saving base, which saving base is used for investment. When you look at it from a national level, economic growth requires a certain level of investment. Investment requires saving. So the only way you can spur your investment to a level that you want to achieve as a country is actually to ensure that you mobilize sufficient domestic savings, which saving will be used for investment which will create jobs which increase the tax base. A tax base helps the country to mobilize sufficient domestic revenue, which are used in infrastructure, in energy, in education, health facilities, even security for the country. So we strongly believe that a strong foundation is based on strong saving culture.
A study conducted by National Institute of Statistics Rwanda last year found that 86% of those who are able to work will save. Experts find that a person should save 30% of their income. Rwanda National Investment Trust CEO Gatera Jonathan says the fund has received a savings of up to 17 billion Rwandan francs, with about 2 billion Rwandan francs which was donated to the beneficiaries during the pandemic last year as well as this year.
It has been growing. We have seen the growth in the last 3 years, very tremendous growth, because today we are around 20 billion of savings. And out of this 20, it would have been 22 billion because so far 2 billion has been withdrawn by the savers themselves who want to clear up some of the issues that are burning issues. So we normally invest in government treasury bonds, and we have other products on the market, on Rwanda Stock Exchange. That's where we normally invest. And for you to get back the money, it requires us at least 4 working days, because the money is already, when it is invested, we need to find out how to bring back the funds. So brief, it is a scheme which enables whoever wants to save from 2,000 francs to the amount you want, which is a scheme that will be enabling all Rwandans to have facility to invest their money and to save.
The profit of 11%, the sum of 40 billion, is what Ejo Heza Fund and Rwanda National Investment Trust Fund has already received in terms of savings in the short time the two funds have been launched. A Finescope study in 2020 found that 86% of those who are able to work save up to 13% of the country's gross domestic product. The country aims to increase the savings rate to 20% by 2024 in order to help the country invest in 30% of the country's gross domestic product. In the national program to accelerate NSTI development from 2017 to 2024, public investment will reach 20.4% from 18.3% of GDP, while private investment will reach 21.2% from 14.4% compared to the GDP in 2017. Martina Abera, RTV News.
A group of 30 young people from Rwanda who attended the Young Connect Africa Summit say they are ready to bring their products to the African market thanks to Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Now, this was reiterated when they visited the AFCFTA headquarters in Accra, Ghana. Since the launch of the African Common Market, young people in the Youth Connect Caravan have been ready to capitalize on this opportunity to increase their trade more than 3 times. On one hand, there are still barriers to the informal sector, which is at 85% in the continent, and it is more prevalent among young people, which are mainly due to lack of information on the market or laws imposed by countries that often discourage traders. Prudence Sebahizi, the Chief Technical Advisor on the African Continent Free Trade Area, told the youth that the market is expanding and it does not necessarily require them to bring massive goods, but that even bringing a healthy idea which could compete on market, and urges them to raise awareness among their peers and be updated on information regarding what is taking place on market.
Why people are involved in informal trade. There are a number of reasons, but I think 2. I can just summarize them into 2. One is lack of information. You just wake up, you have ambition, you want to do business, but you do not know the process to do business. So you don't have that information. How do I register? Like today, you can register a business in less than 24 hours in Rwanda. But people may not have that information. So they just wake up in the morning, they do business, and then at the end they find themselves in informal because they have not registered their business. And then if business is going on well, they don't even care whether to register it or not. So they stay in informal forever. So that's why in Africa we have more than 80% of trade being done informally. The second reason is when the laws are not favorable, then you start finding a way of evading those laws because they are not favorable. It happens. If your taxes are so high, you know the business people will try to evade those taxes. So they will try to find their own ways of doing business without facing the taxes. So the only way to address that informality, you create awareness, you share information, and then you have to relook your laws and see how are the laws working for the business community, not for the government, but for the people. Hari ukuba badafite amakuru, batazi process, inzira binyuramo kugira ngo business yawe uyandikishe, kugira ngo business yawe ikore mu buryo bwemewe n'amategeko. Iyo udafite ayo makuru urabyuka ugatangira igikorwa cyawe. Hanyuma ukazaza kubwirwa ko igikorwa cyawe gikorwa mu buryo butemewe n'amategeko kubera ko utarubizi.